It's time now for the Casey Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's Casey Ingram.
Come Tuesday, Indian River or Martin County, someone's going to look like a genius and someone's going to look like a fool. And you heard from the guys and the men and women that are most involved in this, the gentlemen from CARE and their board in general. I'm sure the decision they made yesterday was not an easy one because that fight's personal and they've been in their own pockets for it.
Since 2014, Indian River County was our brethren in arms. We fought side by side with them until Martin County abandoned them with just a couple days before the lawsuit decision was handed down from the judge in November 2018. Martin County could have done nothing, let the lawsuit be decided, take the loss like Indian River County did, and then Martin County could have decided to not appeal. It would not have cost us any more money to do this, and the commissioners would still be able to advocate for us. Martin County did not have to settle, and certainly did not have to settle with the egregious terms that they agreed to. The court case would be decided the following week. The Board of County Commissioners knew this, but the commissioners rushed to the settlement under the pretense they had leverage to negotiate wins for our community. Wins like having the bridge closed 45 minutes out of every hour. Yes, they considered that a win. Indian River County went on to file an appeal, and as a result, Indian River County received more in benefits than we did, as they ended up settling with Brightline in exchange for $30 million in safety improvements. Indian River County did spend about $6 million battling Brightline, but they felt it was good money spent considering the benefits they negotiated. More importantly, Indian River County Commissioners can still represent their residents and support or lobby for laws or regulations affecting Brightline operations. Who is the genius? Who is the fool? I have my opinion, but after hearing the information on today's show, I will leave it to you to decide. Today I'm going to go over the settlement agreement that Martin County agreed to on Thanksgiving weekend in November 2018. As you know, Brightline has announced their schedule and will be selling tickets from Miami to Orlando starting in June. They will begin at 5 a.m. in Miami, and the last train will return at 9:45 p.m. There will be 2 trains every hour plus freight trains. I was just at a press conference here on Monday. There's a new group, if you can put that picture up, Iggy, number 3. FightTheBrightLie.com. This group is opposing the bridge being down for 45 minutes an hour. They know that we need more than 15 minutes an hour to get our boaters through the bridge and have access. And there's 13 different marine companies that have filed this lawsuit. At that press conference, they stated that the bridge takes 18 minutes to go up and down. So you can do the math. 18 minutes, there's 2 trains. It's a single track, so those trains are not going to be crossing at the same time. And it leaves you very little time to have access and ocean access. But keep in mind, as you are asked to acquiesce on the train's demands, that these are foreign-owned companies. And what I mean by that, Florida East Coast Railway is owned by a Mexican conglomerate, Grupo Mexico. Brightline is owned by a Japanese investment firm, SoftBank. So as you're being asked to support these trains with your taxes, with grants, what have you, these are both foreign-owned corporations. Again, when we had this press conference on Monday with Fight the Bright Lie, you will notice there were no commissioners there. And this is why. This is directly out of the settlement agreement. Martin shall not seek to impose any county or local approval or permitting requirements with respect to the work currently proposed to be done within the FECR right away. During the period of construction in the first 3 years of Brightline passenger revenue operations between West Palm Beach and Orlando, Martin and CARE will not pass any resolution or adopt any other official act that publicly supports or actively encourages third parties to support any federal or state legislation or new county laws or regulations that would directly and adversely impact the Brightline project. Martin and CARE will not pass any regulation or adopt any other official act that publicly supports or actively encourages others to support any federal, state, county laws. As you can see, people, our commissioners agreed to be silent. They cannot oppose Brightline. They cannot introduce any new regulations, and it's been, it's really tough for us all. So we're going to go over this agreement. If you have any questions, I would like you to ask them on Facebook Live. After the show, I'll go back and try and answer them, but there's a lot to cover here, so I'm probably not going to be able to answer your questions on the air. Just so you know, the same commissioners that are in office today were the same commissioners that voted for this agreement back in November of 2018. Coincidentally, Chair Campy was also the chair then, so I have a lot of clips that I'll be sharing with you about the agreement, and he is the main person that was speaking on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners. I want to give you a little bit of history of my role, and to be fully transparent. I started Florida Not All Aboard back in 2014. I was the very first group that sounded the alarm about the train and what it was coming. And to be honest with you, I thought it would be just those of us west of the bridge, because I recognized that having 32 trains a day was going to close that bridge a lot. And I went to the marinas, I went to Mariners, a lot of homeowners west of the bridge stood up and we started sounding the horn. And wow, did Florida Not All Aboard grow quickly. We ended up having over 75,000 people sign a petition against the train. And we presented, or I did mainly, and my group, we went from Brevard down to Miami. We made presentations to municipalities, to governments, to HOAs. I personally flew with my husband to Washington, D.C. We met with the Federal Railroad Administration, the head of the Railroad Administration. Initially, we were opposing what was called a RIF loan. It was a 100% taxpayer-backed loan the train applied for. It was over $1 billion. And it would have been, like a digital domain on rails is what we called it, because if the passenger rail went bankrupt, the taxpayers were left holding that loan, holding the bag 100%. We opposed that. We thought if we could stop the money, the funding for the train wouldn't be able to be funded and therefore would not happen. We did win that battle. They did not get the RIF loan, but as you know, as time went on, they found other ways to get funding, and a lot of the counties to the south of us helped them get a lot of funding. Of course, they had the private activity bonds that were supported through the state of Florida, so that happened. Care Florida ended up organizing in about 2015, and Care Florida actually organized after I presented to a lot of the HOAs down in Palm Beach Gardens. I presented Jupiter Island, Loblolly, Susan Maheel, Phyllis Fry. We all presented down by Mariner Sands, and these HOAs, after hearing our presentation, formed Care Florida. And I just want folks to know this, that at the time, I realized that the train was moving forward. They were finding other ways to fund, and we would need a legal battle. I'm terrible at fundraising. I didn't have those connections, and there was connections within these HOAs that knew Steve Ryan, who ended up being the attorney for Care Florida, and Martin County also hired him. I thought it was a really good thing. I knew we needed to take this to the next step, and I was there to help Care Florida with whatever they needed. However, Care Florida really didn't want me to be part of the group, and I just want you to know that when I offered to bring my group in to help as much as we could, because we had a ton of grassroots support, they told me I needed to come up with $50,000 to sit on their steering committee table. So, folks, I'm not stupid. Obviously, they didn't want me there. My husband and I put in over $100,000 fighting this. We rented huge billboards. We had mobile trucks, the websites and printers, and there was just so much expense with this to let the community know. And we put that money up, and my goodness, like I said, we had over 75,000 people sign a petition. Had so many volunteers, and I'm not going to name you all, but Susan Maheel, Phyllis Fry, Gail Ryan, Julia Sansevier, Lori Dubay, the McAdams, the Ulriches, the Nells. There was so many. We had hundreds of volunteers up and down from Brevard down to Miami-Dade. We had resolutions from various groups and governmental entities from Miami-Dade to Brevard. And so that's kind of a little bit of the background. I want to get in now to the settlement agreement. Commissioner Campy mentioned that the guys most involved, Care Florida, was personal and in their own pockets. I wanted to let you know this was personal. My husband had a marina that was west of the bridge. I had a house on the water that's west of the bridge. It was personal, and we dug into our pockets. I'm not sure anybody else can say they put $100,000 of their own money in, but we did, folks. And, I wonder how much, if any member of the Board of County Commissioners even put into this fight. I never mentioned how much money we put in because I foolishly thought our elected officials would do what is best for the entire community, not just the ones they perceived to be the ones with money. Not everyone has money to donate or give. As I said, I'm a terrible fundraiser. I worked with hundreds of volunteers, and not once did I ask them for money or value someone's opinion who had money over someone who didn't. Did I have a personal stake? Yes. But through Florida Not All Aboard, I advocate for everyone from Brevard down to Overtown residents in Miami. But our Board of County Commission only listened to Care Florida. Commissioner Campy, I will tell you, it wasn't just personal to Care Florida, and they definitely were not the only ones who reached into their own pockets. Honestly, the attorney Steve Ryan is probably the one who came out smelling like a rose. I've heard he was paid millions of dollars, but anyone west of the bridge got railroaded by our own county. That's why the Brightline Group has started with 13 businesses that are detrimentally impacted by Care Florida and the county's agreement to have the bridge open just 15 minutes per hour. I sent a letter to our current county attorney, Don Donaldson, and I asked him a lot of questions. I sent the letter on March 7th. I asked him if he could confirm the safety improvements Brightline is providing, what safety improvements is Martin County providing, who is responsible for safety improvements within the city of Stuart, has a location for an aerial pedestrian bridge been decided upon? Is Martin County planning on installing any safety fencing in the county? Where? When? Where's Brightline installing safety fencing? What other safety measures have been added to the tracks to protect the residents of Martin County? Can you or someone in the county provide information on the speed of the train at each of the 26 grade crossings? Bridge modification. Is the Brightline raising the low chord elevation by 12 to 24 inches above the low chord height? Did Brightline Bridge Analysis permit more than or less than 35% of boat traffic to pass through this modification? And does the county know what the St. Lucie Bridge modifications are that Brightline is working on while it's closed right now? Is there a limit to the amount of money Martin County will have to pay to Brightline if Brightline constructs a station in the county and requests Martin County to pay 50% of the cost as agreed to in the settlement? And Martin County agreed to certain commitments relating to Brightline. Would the BOCC be able to publicly oppose LNG traveling on the FECR tracks? And Mr. Donaldson just did not reply. I don't know if that was probably because of their agreement that they cannot oppose anything with the tracks. I don't know, but I did ask those questions. I do not have answers. So that was it. Evan, if we can go to cut one, please. This is our attorney, Sarah Woods, on the purpose of efforts with Brightline.
What I want to do is, just for the benefit of the public, to reiterate that the purpose of all of our efforts with Brightline was never, quite frankly, to stop the train. That it's a railroad. They have a right to operate the railroad. What the county's concern was to ensure that the project addressed the negative impacts on our safety, on costs, on the effect on our maritime industry and recreational boaters, and on the environment.
And now if we can go to cut two, this was our then county administrator, Taryn Krizda, negotiating in good faith with All Aboard Florida to get tangible things for like the maritime industry. Cut two.
You know, we went into this, and as Ms. Woods said, we're, never really being able to stop the train. Having a high-speed rail utilize right-of-way that we do not own was not realistic, in my opinion. But we have negotiated in good faith over probably the past 3 years, if not full 4 years, depending on when you want to start that clock. We believe that addressing our safety issues, giving us enough time to evaluate all of our crossings, giving us enough time to evaluate whether there was feasibility in having a station, whether or not there was feasibility in being able to address our marine community. And if you want, Mr. Donaldson is here as well as Ms. Rout, that they can speak to the relationship with as we move forward with our federal partners relative to the marine issues. Those are things that are tangible. Those are things that we're going to be able to rely on in the future, probably at least 14 years, we know, if not more. The potential for this settlement agreement is in double-digit millions for the county. So there have been some benefits in the expenditures that have been made over the past 4 years. So with that, I just would ask as staff that we do recommend that you proceed and approve the settlement as being presented to you.
So many of the residents were out battling this train and trying to, save our community. This thing's going to bifurcate many of the communities here up and down the East Coast. Our county was negotiating in good faith with the train all along behind the scenes, and I feel like the fix was in. And I asked the maritime industry today, especially west of the bridge, did the county adequately address your concerns? They had to just start up a new lawsuit to try and get some fair equity time with that bridge opening. And what is interesting to me about Ms. Krista's statement, she knew it wasn't realistic to take the train, make them use somebody else's tracks. She knew that they weren't going to stop it. This is their property. They can use their property. Yet the county paid $120,000, folks, $120,000 to a consultant, Creech Consulting, with our tax dollars to study using a route the train company did not even own. It's ridiculous to even contemplate telling a private company they have to use another private company's property to conduct business. The county knew this wasn't possible, yet they paid an enormous amount of money to this consultant to tell them that. Then they complain about how much money it was to fight the train. It makes no sense to me. $120,000 for a study that said there's other tracks that the train can't use. Cut 3, Evan, please. Sarah Woods goes over the benefits, and this is all in the settlement agreement.
Mr. Chair, I'd quickly run through the benefits. It might be helpful for the people to know. They may not have been here or listened on Tuesday, so I'll just kind of give an overview of the benefits of the settlement and what we are giving up. There are 27 public roads that cross the FECR tracks in Martin County. 19 are county roads. Brightline's agreed to install vehicle presence detection and or exit gates at their expense at 17 crossings. I believe that's correct. I'm looking for Ms. Rout to correct me if I'm wrong. As a point in reference, the other communities in other areas did not receive that benefit. Brightline's agreed to install at their expense sidewalks at every road crossing requested by the county. For additional sidewalks in other areas, they've agreed to coordinate with us to ensure that our county sidewalks interconnect with the new sidewalks. Brightline's agreed to pay up to $1 million towards fencing costs in addition to the installation and fencing required by the Federal Rail Administration. Just to explain, they're going to have to do a hazard analysis. That hazard through Martin County along the rail. The settlement agreement requires them to install all fencing that hazard analysis either recommends be installed and is required. So we have recommended and required 100% on Brightline's nickel. The $1 million is an over and above number where Ms. Rout and her team will walk the rails and look to see if there's any other areas that we believe would be of benefit. Ms. Rout's told me that computes, the $1 million computes to about 10 miles of rail. If it was on both sides, it would be 5 miles, but it's a significant amount.
And if you can go to Cut 4, Attorney Woods states the benefits to Brightline.
Brightline's benefits are of the proposed settlement are this. County and CARE will dismiss our lawsuit. We will each bear our own attorney's fees during the period of construction and for 5 years after. The county and CARE will not oppose the local permits or any authorizations regarding to the Brightline project or the financing of the project or any other improvements in connection with the Brightline project. The counties also have agreed that they won't require any additional permits or approvals within the county's right-of-way or permitting during the period of construction of the rail and the first 3 years of Brightline West between West Palm and Orlando. The county and CARE agree that they will not and will not encourage others to pass any resolutions or adopt other official acts that would publicly support federal or state legislation or new county laws or regulation that would directly and adversely impact the Brightline project. The last part is that we agree to a mutual release of all claims against the other parties.
So Attorney Woods went over a lot of the contract. Iggy, if you can put up number 2. This settlement agreement was really huge with all the exhibits. It's about 4 or 5 inches. I have it circled in red there. It was a very large settlement agreement. I've got a couple areas I'm going to go over. I'm going to cover the bridge last. I know that's what everybody's most interested in. But the Martin Aerial Pedestrian Bridge, Martin will pay FECR a one-time aerial easement fee in the amount not to exceed $47,600. The grant of the aerial easement shall be subject to compliance with the FECR and Brightline engineering requirements and approvals. Martin and Brightline shall share responsibility for the cost of constructing the aerial pedestrian bridge on an equal basis. And maintenance, Martin shall be solely responsible for the actual maintenance of the aerial pedestrian bridge and the cost of maintenance and replacement of aerial bridge as needed. Again, I don't know where that aerial bridge is going to be. I don't have feedback on that. In relation to the fencing, Brightline will perform a hazard analysis within the time frame provided by statute. The hazard analysis shall include an evaluation designed to determine the locations within Martin where fencing of the Florida East Coast right-of-way is required and recommended for safety. Other than Brightline, none of the parties to the agreement shall have any role in performing the hazard analysis. Brightline shall not be obligated to provide Martin a copy of the hazardous analysis, which provides the analysis is confidential and exempt from disclosure. So Brightline did the analysis, and then they don't provide it to us. Attorney Woods stated that they did not want to provide it to us because it becomes public record, and therefore somebody could use it against Brightline in a lawsuit. So that's why we don't have access. And so I obviously we don't know what their hazard analysis came out and said. So beyond that, the Brightline train station, that's another big topic. Within 5 years of commencement of Brightline's passenger revenue train service from West Palm Beach to Orlando, Brightline agrees to build at least one train station in the Treasure Coast. Construction of the station is subject to the payment of 50% of the station construction cost by the county or municipality which the station is located. Folks, this gets me. Not one commissioner asked how much this station is going to cost, and they agreed to pay for 50% of Brightline's station. This isn't our station. This is for Brightline. This is the company's train station. The stations down south have been going upwards of $75 million each. So they were in a rush to settle this lawsuit, this $4 million lawsuit, and they agreed to pay for 50% of a train station with no idea how much it's going to cost. So, it's... I just can't even understand how we go there. But, Evan, if you can play 6. This is Commissioner Campney on the train station.
So the thing about this is this: the crossings, the safety at the crossings, the fencing. We didn't talk about grinding the humps that some of the crossings have down. Once that work is done, whether the railroad goes bankrupt or not, that work is done. Okay, trains are already crossing, so that work will be done. So how will they owe us for that? They won't. The work will be done. They don't plan on building or contributing to a train station on the Treasure Coast. And I know the city of Stewart would like to have it in Stewart. I'm torn on whether we need to have a train. That, I think, changes the dynamic. Some people love the train station. Some people hate the idea. It's not going to be built until 5 years after they start service, which many of us might think will never start. So it's not like we put up $10 million for a $20 million train station and they went bankrupt and we didn't get it. Or worse, that we built it and a year later they went out of business and now we got a weird empty train station. I don't think we'll potentially ever see the train station.
It's nice that you don't think we're going to see the train station, commissioners, but you agreed to pay for 50% of it in your agreement and signed it. If we could now hear Cut 7, which is Attorney Woods reading a statement from the attorney, Steve Ryan.
Third, the proposed operating agreement for the St. Lucie Bridge will provide critical relief for the maritime community. The agreement requires restriction on bridge closure times, access for maritime activity at the same time each hour, and the likely physical modification of the antiquated bridge to permit some smaller craft underneath. All of these measures will provide significant benefits for the maritime community in the county.
I'm going to read the St. Lucie Bridge modification verbatim now, folks, from that settlement agreement. Subject to the concurrence of FECR and the Coast Guard, and if conditions expressed in this paragraph are met, Brightline agrees to incur the expense of raising the low chord elevation of one roughly 55-foot span of the St. Lucie Bridge by between 12 to 24 inches above mean high water level relative to the current low chord height as part of Brightline's forthcoming repairs to the St. Lucie River Bridge. Within 90 days of the effective date, Brightline shall commission engineering plans for such modifications in order to determine how high of a raise can reasonably and realistically be achieved for the proposed raise. Within 90 days thereafter, Brightline shall commission an analysis designed to determine the percentage of boat traffic the proposed raise will allow to pass under the St. Lucie River Bridge while it is in closed position. The analysis will be similar to the previously commissioned by the town of Jupiter with respect to anticipated raise of low chord elevation of certain spans of the Waxahachie River Bridge. Brightline shall be solely responsible for the cost of the referenced engineering plans and the cost of the analysis of the impact of the proposed raise on boat traffic. If the analysis determines the proposed raise will permit less than 35% of boat traffic to pass under the St. Lucie River Bridge while it is in closed position, Brightline shall not be obligated to proceed with the proposed raise. If the analysis determines the proposed raise will permit at least 35% of boat traffic to pass under the St. Lucie River Bridge while it is in closed position, Brightline shall proceed with the proposed raise. The parties agree that Martin is not responsible for cost for any modifications to the St. Lucie River Bridge as part of this agreement or as part of Brightline's forthcoming repairs to the St. Lucie River Bridge. Subject to concurrence of FECR and Coast Guard, Brightline agrees to a Coast Guard operating rule that requires a bridge monitor to be located at or near the St. Lucie River Bridge. The bridge monitor requirement may be satisfied through the use of the FDOT bridge monitor at the nearby Roosevelt Bridge. The parties agree that Martin is not responsible for the cost of the bridge monitor. Subject to FECR and Coast Guard concurrence, Brightline agrees to a Coast Guard operating rule that requires the St. Lucie River Bridge to be open to marine traffic at least 15 minutes at a set time each hour between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. and open to rail and marine traffic as applicable on an as-needed basis during the remaining times, with the openings and closures to be equally divided between the rail and marine traffic during each of the following 4-hour periods: 6 to 10 a.m., 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., 2 to 6 p.m., and 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. The parties agree not to seek any additional operating rules for the St. Lucie River Bridge for a period of 5 years from the date Brightline commences passenger revenue operations between West Palm and Orlando. Notwithstanding the foregoing, if the United States Coast Guard does not agree for an operating rule consistent with paragraph 7 within 12 months of the effective date, Martin and CARE may seek operating rules consistent with the paragraph from the state and federal government authorities immediately. Folks, your county commissioners, on a 4-to-1 vote, agreed to this bridge being open 15 minutes an hour and not to seek any other additional operating rules for 5 years. And now they've left it up to us as citizens, our tax-paying companies, our tax-paying marine industry, to have to fight this battle on our own. That's what our commissioners did. Play clip 8, please, Evan.
The other thing for the marine industry is that I never heard really any kind of a realistic resolution to how do you keep the trestle up enough for folks to come out of the western side of the St. Lucie into the wide water and out the inlet. If we are able to have a 15-minute window of opportunity that's the same 15 minutes each hour from 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, that does address quite a bit of the issues. Not all of them. And I understand the passion in the room. But that is at least a reasonable option for folks that have taller boats that are on the Palm City side.
Commissioner, it's not reasonable. It's not reasonable at all. And our marine businesses and the folks that are west of the bridge are hurting. To the marinas out there, they already have customers that are leaving because people want to use their boat. They want to go out to the sandbar. They wanted ocean access. Folks that bought homes on the water west of the bridge, there was a study that was done back in 2015. Laurel Kelly, the property appraiser, it showed those homes are going to lose value because of this bridge being closed so much. You pretty much lose your ocean access. So this is very detrimental to our community and to our residents that are here. It's very disappointing. I'm going to next play some clips from the commissioner's comments. The only commissioner I didn't include was Commissioner Hetherington, and she actually was just sworn in the Tuesday before this meeting. Again, this meeting was a special meeting that was held the Saturday after Thanksgiving. You never see commission meetings on Saturday, but this was. Iggy, if you can show picture number 1. For a surprise meeting that the public didn't know about, that room was packed with people that opposed the settlement agreement. And the commissioners still voted for it on a 4-to-1 vote. There was Everybody was against it with the exception of 3 people. 2 of them were from Care, Florida, and the third one said he had 2 people that were working that lived in West Palm Beach, and they couldn't wait for the train so they could bring it, ride it to work. I don't know how they're going to do that because it goes from West Palm to Orlando. There's no stop in Stewart, but that was the 3 people that were supportive. The rest of that room was wholeheartedly against the agreement. Commissioner Hetherington was just sworn in. She did not have time to go through this agreement whatsoever. Again, it was a 4 to 5 inch document, and she just listened to staff recommendation. I had hoped she would have abstained because she wasn't up to speed. She didn't. She listened to the staff recommendation, and she did vote for it. But we'll go to the rest of the commissioners who were in this fight for a long time. Clip 13, Commissioner Ed Campy.
The thing that touched my heart the most, and I will end with this, and it was the first thing that I wrote down, is that, and I think it was Tim or Casey that said it, that as your elected officials, we would be giving up our right to fight for you. That strikes me the most. Okay, now there's a couple, and we mention that quite often in our private meeting. The collective board would obviously not be allowed to be out doing that. That doesn't stop CAT. That doesn't stop Florida Not All Aboard. I still have my First Amendment rights. Now, am I going to be out there trying to get myself into a personal lawsuit against the settlement that we made? We have been strongly fighting, advocating, yelling on your behalf for 4 years, just like you have. I mean, you've seen us at these events. We've been at the events. Today, we have not accomplished any major successes other than the fact that we had a seat at the negotiating table.
There you have it, folks. Commissioner said you guys need to take care of it yourself now, and that's what they've left us to do. Clip 14, Commissioner Jenkins.
At the end of the day, we've worked very hard to get where we're at. We've accomplished CARE's goals of quiet zones, and I can assure you going on in the future, I will be doing everything I can to protect the citizens of this county.
You can't protect us because you agreed to be quiet, Commissioner Jenkins. You agreed not to say anything against the train anymore. And there was more than CARE's goals. You had a whole community that was fighting, hopefully for equity and rights, especially those of us west of the bridge that are now, I feel we really got screwed over. If you're west of the bridge, we were the ones that were just completely left out of this decision. Our voices did not matter on this bridge opening and having ocean access or our property values. That's how I feel about this. Next, we'll hear from Commissioner Smith, clip 15.
As Commissioner Campy said, you really have 2 choices. You have one where you'll either look really good Tuesday morning or Tuesday afternoon, or you look really bad. And sometimes the really bad sticks and sometimes the really good sticks. So I'm going to err on the side of caution relative to what I think we can achieve for Martin County. And I think that's really where we are at this point. My motion is to move to rescind. That will be the first step to rescind the action we took last Tuesday.
Yes, sir.
I wish you would have erred on the side of the residents, Commissioner Smith. And last, we're going to hear from our single dissenting vote, Commissioner Sarah Hurd, clip 16.
So I am not going to give up my right or my responsibility to protect the residents and the resources of Martin County. So I'm not going to... I won't be supporting the settlement.
You can hear the support in that room for her no vote, and I wish we would have had more no votes, but there you have it. Another interesting thing here is our attorney, Sarah Woods. She made some comments about how she feels the FRA is going to keep us safe. And frankly, folks, the FRA, the Coast Guard, the Army Corps, none of them are looking out for our health, safety, and welfare. Can you play clip 17?
Quite honestly, I would assume if there was new technology developed that would make the railroad a safer place, perhaps it's naive of me, but I would assume that our Federal Rail Administration would require them to update, and anything new that they found to be positive would be used. I just have that kind of faith. You could call me naive, but I guess I do have belief in our system that new requirements that were discovered to help health, safety, and welfare would be implemented. Ms.
So, folks, I want to remind you all that we have freight trains traveling at 40 miles an hour, and we have Brightline that's traveling at speeds up to 110 miles per hour on the same tracks. Plus, we have our choke point right here in Stuart. That is our single track. It is the only single tracked point along the line from Orlando down to Miami, right here in Stuart. So, and on these freight trains, you don't know what kind of chemicals they're carrying. They're trying to carry LNG. I did a show on that a few weeks ago, and very, very explosive, very dangerous item to be carrying on the trains besides the other chemicals that they carry. Again, and then there's Brightline, up to 110 miles per hour through here. That is not safe, and the FRA is not looking out for us. And there's a single track. There's multiple videos already on Facebook of folks where the crossing arms either aren't going down as the train is crossing, or they're just going down for no reason, and there's no train there. So this system is not perfect. We're hoping there's going to be no errors, and that's really all we can do at this point is hope and pray that there's not going to be any errors and any mistakes, and that there's not going to be human error. There's been train crashes, reported all across the United States right now, and accidents do happen, and it's a very frightening thing. This frustrates me. I mean, I know our maritime industry and those west of the bridge are suffering, and we know there's going to be deaths here as well. When you look at these train tracks and where they're going through Stuart, through Jensen Beach, through Port Salerno, and our county commission can't say anything about it. They cannot say anything about it. They can't even advocate for greater safety regulations. And truly, that's what we need. I want to point out one of the gentlemen that was at the meeting that day, Mr. Lamphere. He is a very strong speaker and an expert on train. He was called the father of precision schedule railroading. So if you can play clip 11.
This weekend, you need to insert two things into the proposed agreement, and I suggest you call Steve and insert them. The first is that the FRA needs to certify that the trains can safely pass one another. You've heard from a network expert this morning, but right now, my operating people, and I should tell you that I've been a director of the Florida East Coast, negotiated the sale to Fortress, been a director of the CSX, the Canadian National, which is, of course, goes from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic, the Illinois Central, where I was chairman, and for better or worse, I'm known as the father of precision scheduled railroading in North America, and also as the Paul Revere of the second coming revolution of precision scheduled railroading. So I've operated the FEC, and right now the trains can't pass one another on two tracks. And I can assure you they've brought in the experts to bring in, to try to decide the extensiveness of the sightings. So this weekend, you need to ask Steve to please insert the language that I suggest the FRA pass on the fact that these trains can actually physically and safely, with the correct spacing, pass one another, because they can't pass on two tracks with the freight trains in between. You can't do it. But for our own protection, and it is a liability, it is a negligence, it borders on gross negligence, Council, in terms of knowing from railroaders that we've got a problem on the trains passing and on getting the latest technology and preparing ourselves.
Folks, that was a really powerful statement there. The father of precision scheduling, he needed to put that in the settlement agreement. And Commissioner Campy did ask for it to be put in and included, but our county attorney absolutely would not entertain it. She said, Brightline said, this is it. There's no modifying this agreement. They talked about having such strong negotiations and having a seat at the table. And this is why we needed to do this settlement, because they felt that if they agreed to this settlement rather than just lose the court case in 4 days, this was their leverage. And the truth was, the leverage wasn't, we didn't have any leverage. Brightline was telling us what to do. This was a great settlement agreement for Brightline. Again, Indian River County, they got over $30 million in benefits. It's about roughly double what we received. And they did go on and appeal that decision. They ended up settling with Brightline, but they did have leverage because Brightline wanted them to stop suing. we stopped suing, we agreed not to create any other regulations or safety or even speak out against them again. This was a huge win for Brightline, and it was shocking to me that when this man had really great points that needed to be put into the settlement. And when he says Ryan, he was talking about Steve Ryan, and that's who the county in Care, Florida had hired to include this in the agreement. Our attorney absolutely would not. I guess they said they added a note, a letter, which means absolutely nothing legally about it, but that was it. So, Evan, if you could play cut 12, please.
Let me hear from our attorney. I'm not an attorney, by the way.
The reason I was shaking my head is not because it isn't a good idea, but Brightline has been crystal clear. This is it. They will not.
Please stop. So, folks, there you are. You can hear how upset the crowd was that they wanted this to be added to the agreement, and our attorney said, nope, Brightline's crystal clear. This is it. You need to take this agreement or leave it. And really, like I said, Brightline was the real big winner here. And that's why we have, fightthebrightlie.com, folks. Fightthebrightlie.com. Unfortunately, our commissioners have left it up to us. These folks need money to help fight this train. It takes a lot of money for these legal battles, and they have filed their lawsuit. It's our only hope to hopefully get this bridge open at least equitably, and that would be 30 minutes every hour. I don't know what's going to happen with this. There's been other lawsuits, and then our own county commission agreed to the 15 minutes. But our residents and our Marine base, our companies here that are taxpayers here in the county, they need your help. So again, I'm going to push that out, fightthebrightlie.com. They had a press conference here last Monday. It's on my Facebook page if you want to listen to that. And these folks are hoping to do what our commission didn't do. And, you heard Commissioner Campy say, you guys can keep fighting. We're done, but you guys can keep fighting. So they left it up for us to try and do what's right and safe for our community. There's other groups out there I wanted to mention as well. There's Alliance for Safe Trains. Susan Mihil up in Indian River County has that group, and she's doing a lot of work on local and state level, trying to make sure that there's safety regulations, and we're trying to have regulations on these trains on how they travel up and down the tracks with the freight trains, and maybe there should be some speed limits through our communities, right? We have 25 miles per hour for cars, but the trains can go through at 110. It doesn't make sense. And of course, there's Fight the Bright Lie. This train system's been so interesting. Like I said, we fought from the start about funding, and we knew we couldn't make them move to another part of the state. As much as we would like that, they told us, we own the land, we own the tracks, we'll do what we want, and clearly that is what they've done. And we understood that's their property, they do own that, but when it uses our taxpayer money, we should have a voice, and they are using our taxpayer money. Your commissioners have committed you to pay for 50% of their station. Again, folks, these trains are owned, they're foreign-owned entities. The freight division, the one that actually owns the track, is owned by Grupo Mexico. It's a Mexican company, conglomerate. The SoftBank is a Japanese investment firm. That's what ultimately owns Brightline. Two foreign-owned companies. And yet, Miami and Broward, Palm Beach, and, now Martin here to an extent, we're helping these foreign companies using our taxpayer money as they're ruining our communities, as they're shutting down our maritime industry. That bridge, which is closed right now, that old rust bucket, it's almost 100 years old. That bridge is the single biggest point of contention, I would say, on this entire track. And frankly, it needs to be replaced, but it's not. And it's, again, Brightline owns it. And, we're just left here having to deal with it. It's closing our waterways for the next 3 weeks while they're doing some sort of repairs. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but hopefully it will operate better, because it has been had problems with it being either stuck in the up position or the down position, and causing tremendous backups, traffic backups here throughout the community. So hopefully it'll work a little bit better, but it's still a slow, old bridge. And Brightline continues. I think it's pretty fascinating here and very interesting. And they continue to try to raise money. They need to pay the interest on their bonds. And one of the things that they're doing is they're charging $50 million to Miami, and they're trying for Broward and Palm Beach as well, to add a commuter train service to the tracks down there. So they're going to let another train service use the tracks. They're charging $50 million to Miami and then $12 million a year for the next 30 years. And this is the way they're using these funds to pay the fees, paying off its bond debt. I find this interesting when the tracks are actually owned by Grupo Mexico. How is Brightline the one that's releasing out the tracks and getting the benefit of the financial benefit of it, and not Grupo Mexico? Who knows? We don't know what that. We don't know exactly what that agreement says. How Grupo Mexico even purchased the Florida East Coast Railway. That was done very quietly, about the same time that SoftBank purchased Fortress, which was, of course, owned both entities at the time. So it's not public record, but you just have to wonder how that agreement works. I will say hats off to you, Brightline. You guys really took our community for a ride. You got our commissioners to agree to be silent, to never oppose you again. You made sure they're not going to advocate for greater safety regulations. I mean, hats off to you. You got our state to support your private activity bonds. So you're able to sell them. They might be 12%, but you are selling them. And it's really one of those things. This train company came in, and I feel like, they hornswoggled us. And that's pretty much what it is. We got one more clip I wanted to play. And do we have, I got to ask Evan, do we have 4 minutes left of the show or 4 minutes before we can play the clip?
What I'm telling you is when you got to stop.
Oh, I get to talk a little bit more. So,
you can play the clip now if you want.
So, actually, let me go to that in just a second. But that's pretty much what we wanted to cover here with Brightline. If you have any questions, please put them on Facebook, and I will go back and watch them again. Again, I want you to make sure you go to fightthebrightlie.com. As citizens, we're going to still fight this, and we're going to hope we get equity for our marine industries. And again, I feel so bad for these folks because they have businesses that have contributed to this county greatly over the years. They've paid taxes, and our county's just left them holding the bag. And what do you expect people with boats that are west of the bridge? Of course they want to be on the other side so they can use the sandbar, so they can go to the ocean and have ocean access. And 15 minutes on that bridge, you're lucky to get one boat through there at a time. There's impossible to be getting two boats crossing, and to have just 15 minutes to try to get boats in and out, especially on the weekend and holidays, folks, it's not going to happen, and it's dangerous. So let's hope we can get some equity. Again, I support these folks so much. FightTheBrightLie.com. It's a lawsuit that I hope is very successful, and we get what our county commissioners left us to have to fight. But hopefully we get the equity we were hoping our county commissioners would fight for us. I know I'm being pretty hard on the commissioners, but I just don't understand how you run for office to elect people. We pay your salaries, and you take an oath to protect our health, safety, and welfare. I don't understand how you do that when you sign an agreement that you cannot protect our health, safety, and welfare, that you won't speak up, that you won't even encourage other people to speak up for our safety. I don't understand how you're keeping your oath that way, and it crushed me and I respect and I hate having to pick on elected officials because you get a lot of people and you get a lot of bashing all the time. But my goodness, folks, you did run to represent us. This is supposed to be you're a public servant. How do you represent us when you signed this agreement? I still don't understand. You won't pass any resolution, adopt any other official act that publicly supports or actively encourages others to support any federal, state, county regulation. And it's just very disappointing. So I'm going to close out the show with comments from folks that were at that Thanksgiving weekend emergency meeting, and there's a lot of great comments folks, fightthebrightlie.com. And here, Iggy or Evan, if you could play that last clip. Here are some of you that day on Thanksgiving.
Money is not everything. It's the human being here we're talking about.
I want to encourage you not to give away your rights as a commissioner to our community. Don't give up your rights to represent me. That's important to everybody in this community.
I think you're dealing with an organization that's been disingenuous from the get-go. And I encourage you to, again, look at all the problems that they pointed out themselves in the environmental impact statement and things that have not been addressed by this agreement.
Are there any penalties written into this contract, a performance contract, that they have to perform this? The safety issues, I'm glad you people are looking at them, but I don't believe they're ever going to do them.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bill Biggs. I'm with Riverwatch Marina. I'm a board member of the Marine Industry Association of the Treasure Coast, and I'm a Palm City resident. The marine industry has been opposed to the train since the very beginning, and unfortunately, I haven't heard anything in this new agreement that would change our mind. Promises to study the bridge are not promises at all. I haven't heard a promise to do anything. I mean, the marine traffic now, the Coast Guard had said that, we could have the bridge open half an hour. Now I hear it's 15 minutes. So that's going to severely impact about 20 commercial marine properties west of the trestle, not to mention all the people that live on the water in Palm City and Stewart.
The freight problem with this whole thing is LNG, which is only one of a number of extremely hazardous materials. Martin County firefighters did a report on this 2 years ago, in 2017, about the prospects of what happens if there's an incident anywhere near any of these crossings or anywhere near these populated areas. This is a serious concern of all of us that live anywhere near these tracks.
I'm speaking now, and the other people are speaking now. I wish we could have spoken before you took the first vote. This is a very awkward moment. I understand the restrictions before you. Indian River County faces those same restrictions. They came up with a different process than did you.
This train, this is a private project. It's a private project by Brightline. Yes, FREC owns the tracks. Brightline is going to sit there and run on the FREC tracks. So this being a private project, why would we have to pay for any maintenance at all? Understanding that we also already pay maintenance to FREC because, yes, we're running our roads over their tracks. That's understandable. The best of it is that we should not have to pay for Brightline having to do their upgrades. It's their private project. They need to pay for the maintenance on those crossings. And we shouldn't have to pay anything on that, ever.
Commissioners, I humbly ask you, by signing this agreement, how can you fulfill your duty to protect your constituents' health, safety, welfare, and economics? This agreement does not allow you to lobby for pending legislation proposed by our state legislators or lobby at the federal level alongside Congressman Mast and Posey. In my opinion, this type of agreement is immoral and unethical. We do not know what may be coming down the road with this train that may impact the economics, health, safety, and welfare of our county. Who could predict the amount of deaths that have occurred already in the South counties? By signing this agreement, you cannot speak on our behalf. Isn't that what you're supposed to do as an elected official? How can you advocate for your constituents if you allow Brightline to silence you? I and many of your constituents voted for you and are counting on you to be our voice to represent us in issues that may be detrimental to our community. Please don't agree to be silenced.